Hello and welcome to Underdogs, Bootstrappers, and Game Changers. This is for those of you that are starting with nothing and using business to change their stars. Motivating people who disrupted industry standards. This is the real side of business. This isn't Shark Tank. My aim with this podcast is to take away some of the imaginary roadblocks that are out there. I want to help more underdogs because underdogs are truly who change the world. This is part of our Content for Good initiative. All the proceeds from the monetization of this podcast will go to charitable causes. It's for the person that wants it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Underdogs, Bootstrappers, Game Changers. And once again, folks, I am so excited to have my dear friend Lisa here today.
Hi.
And it happens to be Lisa's birthday.
Oh goodness, we don't have to tell everybody.
And here's Lisa's birthday present, being on Underdogs. And so Lisa happens to be in town because we have a meeting for our foundation tomorrow that we're starting. And so I thought it prudent to have a discussion around how to change things, right? And how to think of things a little bit different and how to immerse into systems and how to get the right people involved in changing something. And so what I hope you get out of this episode today is a different way to look at the things of this world that you might want to impact. That being said, I want to welcome Lisa officially. And Lisa, I know we have to start at the start, right? And so I know that's not always easy to do that, and I'm starting to just throw you into that pit. But I think it's important because I think you're such an underdog, bootstrapper, and game changer, you know? And so I want the audience to know that as well and why. And so if you would, can you tell me a little bit about like the way you grew up and how that's impacted you so far?
Yeah. So, I guess that's why I'm here. Trying to make a change, make a difference. It's because I started out my life not so great. I was born with parents who were addicts, and went into foster care at 2, and then I went through 36 foster homes, and I had some pretty terrible experiences. And then at 18, I aged out, and I was homeless, and I don't like that society does that. I don't enjoy that, and I want to make people aware. Like we're sending kids through this system, and then we're sending them out on their own to be homeless, and there's nothing for them. And so that's why you and I are here, hopefully, to make a change and make a difference, and just change the way the system is doing things.
There's so many things with you that like I just absolutely adore, and then also you bring out like the protective nature in me because I see you, especially in like comments and stuff. Like I can't believe like the content you put out is like I want to help kids, and then like the trash that people spit back at you. It frustrates me on another level. It's like, I'm not like, you can make fun of me all you want and people do, it's like, but it affects me, especially when I see you doing good work and then like people are in the comments, like saying horrible things to you.
I mean, yeah, people are super brave behind a keyboard, I think.
Yeah.
I don't really think they even mean it, honestly. Yeah. Like they say these like just horrible, terrible comments. And I'm like, I really don't think they mean it. I think they just,
And folks, just so you know, the type of content Lisa produces is she's a big voice for foster advocacy. And she's not saying like, she's not downplaying your favorite sports team. She's not like really taking political arguments. I mean, you do a little bit sometimes, but mostly it's like, hey, we need to change this system for foster kids. And people are like attacking you in the comments over that. And it's just crazy to me.
They're like, you're ugly. I'm like, okay, cool. But can you donate or are you going to help?
It's so frustrating to me because like I try to like help people that have a voice. I'm going to drop this story because I think this is you in a way. There was this guy and he looks like a hillbilly. He's actually kind of missing some teeth and stuff. He's on TikTok and he's got big red beard. He actually kind of looks like me in a way. It's like pretty hillbilly looking, right? And he's like, can you believe they made the Little Mermaid black, right? And then all of a sudden it shows these clips of videos and it's all these black girls crying, seeing Princess Aria being black.
Oh,
And,
okay.
she looks like me, you know, it's like all this
Yes.
stuff. And in the end, he is like crying and he's like, if you can't appreciate that, you're a heartless mother effer, you know? And so
Representation matters. It matters so much.
he was the right voice for that because you expected this hillbilly thought about him and he just completely 180'd you. And I'm not saying you're a hillbilly different voice, it's in a different way, but you're, to me, the right voice for the message that's out there around foster care advocacy.
I'm trying.
Because you're
It's,
not.
it gets hard. It gets rough. And I got to take breaks, but I can't stop.
What people don't know about you is you're so brave. And I love one of your favorite, one of my favorite comments that you've ever made is like, I survived out of spite.
Yes.
And I tell people all the time that you have this like underglowing like fire in you that's feisty that I love. And you're the type of person that's going to change this system. And when I looked at that, you being the proper person for the message and for, you know, what you've been through, and then like what you're doing, I'm like, I got to support this person any way I can.
It goes back to like representation. Representation matters. And I've been in so many like foster care advocacy meetings where it's just a bunch of people sitting in a room who've never experienced foster care.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, you can have an opinion on it, but you don't understand it.
And you can't fix it from that way.
No, because they don't get it.
No. You know, here's another example, and not to make this all about me, but it's like I like to bring messages home, and it's like I hated the kill shelters, animal kill shelters. A huge lover of animals. I'm like, how can they have these places on the planet that are these animal kill shelters? And when I get curious about something or angry about something, I have to get involved with it. So I ended up spending 5 years volunteering at an animal kill shelter because I had to understand it. You know, it's like,
yeah.
And what I realized, I was in the clinic there. They liked me because I can actually pick up the big dogs while they're asleep from the neutering surgeries. And so I realized that everybody there was animal lovers. And nothing against no-kill shelters either, but it's basically when they don't have enough room, they just close the door, right? And so the real problem was I was hating kill shelters. That wasn't the issue. It's the fact that we don't adopt animals, right?
Fair.
You know, it's like that was the real problem. But how, if we were solving the I hate kill shelters and we're closing those down, which is the last stop at the end for the dogs anyways, you know, it's like they don't want to kill dogs there. I can tell you that
yeah.
right now. But it's like we were fixing the problem wrong if I had started fixing the problem then. And that's why it's like having you involved, you know, with like foster connections is like imperative in my mind because you know the system better than any of us can.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have representation. If you're going to change something, you need, like, if you're in a room talking about foster care, you need to have people who've been through foster care. Or,
Agreed.
I mean, just having foster parents, great, they have a unique understanding, but they still don't have the right perspective.
Yeah.
To make actual positive changes.
I mean, there's a point, it's like Foster Connections' goal at this point is to combine resources that are currently available for kids out there, right? Because it's like I ate lunch with the dean of my business school not too long ago, and she's like, Tyler, ASU's free for foster kids. Problem is they don't know about it, and they don't know how to utilize it, right? And so like our goal with Foster Connections is basically to combine those amazing resources and help them utilize those resources. And Lisa brought up an amazing point. Do you remember the point you brought up around like, what we would need to do first to even have an impact?
What do you mean? No, maybe.
I mean, nobody would have thought of this, but you're like, hey, we need to get them an ID and a birth certificate. They can't even be involved with the systems that are available if they don't have those things.
Well, that's the thing is you don't know what you don't know. And when you go through foster care, there's so many things that you're not taught that, like, I guess, quote unquote, normal kids would have been taught. And you have to start at the beginning, and it's really difficult for people who don't have like a concept of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like getting an ID, like that seems like common knowledge, but when you go through foster care and you age out at 18, like that's one, you probably don't even have money to go get an ID. Like you got to spend money to get money. Like it's insane. And you know, they don't have a resume or a birth certificate or a social security card. And in order to get a job, you need all of those things. But in order to get those things, you need a job to pay for them.
Yeah.
And it's this really weird cycle where there's people find it so hard to be like, oh, like, why is this difficult? Why are they struggling? Why are so many foster teens homeless? And it's just because they're so far removed from the situation, they can't they can't understand like these little nuances of, getting your ID or getting a social security card. And it seems so easy to people, but when you're in that situation, it's not easy.
Kids don't know how to advocate for themselves. I mean, my brother went to go to college and he walked in and tried to get financial aid like anybody would, and they denied him, and then I heard about this, and luckily I had gotten a little confidence by then, and I went in there, and I don't take no for an answer at that point very well, and I'm like, hey, why did you deny my brother for financial aid? And they're like, well, we need your parents' tax returns. And I'm like, my dad's been in prison for 15 years, and my mom's never had a job in her life. If this system isn't built for somebody like my brother, who's it built for? But the problem is, and that's why I understand this about what you're talking about, is because my brother's 18 years old. They told him no. He didn't think he could argue or do anything else.
He wasn't going to. He wasn't going to advocate.
And not everybody has an older brother to go in there and fight. And guess what? He had financial aid in 3 hours after I did that, And that's where it was like, to me, was a aha moment, because these kids, there's a bunch of things out there for them, Tyler. It's like, yeah, but they don't know how to utilize them.
They don't.
And they take no for an answer too quickly.
Yes, and I said this the other day. I did a speech the other day for foster youth, and I said, don't stop at the first no. Ask and keep asking.
Yeah.
Because for every 10 people that tell you no, there's going to be one that's going to tell you yes. And that was a mistake that I made, coming into adulthood. Like, I got denied for so many things, like food stamps. I tried to get food stamps, and they're like, no. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, I guess I'll just starve.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to advocate for myself. They said no to me, and I just accepted that. And that's one thing that I really, really try to, like, impart on children or teens that I talk to now, is how to somewhat advocate for yourself. And like, if you get told no, just keep trying, please.
I was listening to a stat this morning that 30% of like millennials, I think it's millennials, are bringing their parents with them to a job interview. It's like, okay, think about that. It's like, and now we're expecting some poor foster kid that's never actually, and we treat the poor differently too.
Oh, we do.
We treat them in a way that there's this pauper mentality to being poor. And I only know because I've progressed through it. It's like, okay, the authority tells you you're not allowed to do this, and you believe it, right? You don't advocate for it. It's a weird psychology, but it's true. And so these kids are like, okay, no means no. It's like, until they get to the point where no doesn't mean no. And that's where I hope Foster Connection can kind of step in too. It's like, hey, you don't have the older brother, you don't have the parent, it's like somebody needs to help you like understand that like no doesn't always mean no.
And people need like mentors, or it's just so difficult, because when you grow up in foster care, like most of the time it's not, you don't have a good situation.
Yeah.
You learn quickly not to push back.
Yeah.
Like, you don't talk back to authority. You don't push back, or, something bad is going to happen.
Because we call it pushing back instead of advocating for yourself.
Yeah. Or talking back, or being defiant.
Yeah.
They call it many different things, but when you go through that and then you become an adult, then it's like, how do I advocate for myself safely?
Yeah.
Like, because, as a kid, I was like, if I said the wrong thing, I'm going to get backhanded. So I learned quickly, like, maybe I shouldn't do that. And you have to change that entire mindset, that entire mentality of, like, just being an adult. Like, I didn't know that I was an adult. It was super weird. Like, I turned 18 and I was like, okay, I'm like a grown up, but I was still afraid of adults. Like, I was terrified of like authority figures. And it took me a really long time to realize that, like, I'm an adult. I can say things. I can do what I want, and I can say no. Like, it took me a really long time to realize that, like, just coming into adulthood. And I hope that the teens that I talk to now, like, I hope that I can give them some of that. Like you're safe. You're an adult. Like, you can, you're allowed to make your own decisions. You have free will.
Do me a favor and tell people about the age out issue, because I don't think most people know. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Well, we have 20,000 youth age out of foster care every year. And people talk so much about homelessness. There's a lot of negative ideas around homelessness. But we have one system that's putting out 20,000 youth every year, and 50% of them will be homeless. So we have one system that's putting out 10,000 homeless people every single year. And we have these teens who are, they turn 18 and they show up to their foster home and they're like, oh, you don't live here anymore. And they're just instantly homeless. And there's no resources. The foster care generally probably paid for their entire life, and then they turn 18 and all of a sudden there's no insurance. There's no anything. And there are some systems like in place, like independent living program. They're state run, state funded, but they have barriers. And that's a problem with like a lot of organizations or governmental organizations. They have a whole lot of barriers. And we have these kids who've gone through like immense amounts of trauma, and we're going to put up these barriers. Like, okay, if you have an addiction, if you have mental health problems, like you don't qualify for this program. And those addictions and those mental health problems, they come from foster care. Like foster care created that. And so
give me those stats too that get us both in trouble. The ones that got me banned from Instagram, basically.
The death row one?
Yeah.
What was it? 80? No, 90, right?
I think it's
90% of the 90% of the people on death row in California came from foster care.
Yeah.
And it's
and then tell me about the trafficking.
80% of the children rescued from trafficking came from foster care. And then when it moves to adults, it's 90% of the women who are trafficking survivors spent time in foster care.
That's what's so crazy to me. And it's crazy that I've been kind of like blacklisted from Instagram for like quoting some of those stats. It's like, if we're not putting this messaging out in the world, because even if you don't care about kids, folks, it's like, shame on you, first of all. But even if you don't, like, look at the impacts on society, right? It's like, and when what kind of got me into all this is I volunteered for 5 years at a foster care home and learned a lot about it. An amazing one here in town. And then I spent a very, very small amount of time in
I told you I
system.
met 2 kids from there.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
That said good things about it.
Yes, yeah.
No, it's an amazing facility, and I was proud to be out there. I worked with a lot of the kids and stuff. And so they're doing it right, in my opinion, and so I love, since I'm a business guy, through to the core, I love the fact that they take in donations of furniture. So they take in your furniture donations, they sell those, and those make a decent chunk of money that partially funds the home every year. And it's more like, I should take you out there, it's more like a neighborhood. It doesn't look like any sort of facility. And I had a youth incarceration group in here. I'm advising for marketing, for groups quite often, charities. And they happen to drop that, like, when we don't have anywhere for the kids to go, when there's no room, kind of like the animal shelter problem. It's like, although it's not, I guess, fair to compare it, but it's like nowhere for the kids to go. They go to youth incarceration centers despite having done nothing wrong.
Yes.
And that horrified me.
Well, and then they expect you like to be good, quote unquote. And it's like,
here, go to jail and now be good.
Yeah. And it's like, you're angry.
You didn't do anything wrong.
You're mad. You're angry. I remember like getting sent to these group homes and I was so angry. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so then I'm mad and I'm like, I'm running away or I'm leaving or I'm not coming back here. This is ridiculous.
Yep.
And then I get punished and I'm like, I'm being punished for doing nothing. And then I get upset about it. And now I'm punished for being upset about being here for no reason. In Portland, actually, they're putting kids in hotel rooms, foster kids. They don't have homes, so they're putting them in hotel rooms like together, and it's insane. They purchased a closed down juvenile hall facility, like detention center, and they're putting foster kids in there. Like they redid it, I guess. They're trying to remodel it, but I mean, these kids have gone through horrible things, like probably the worst thing you can imagine, right? Being taken away from your parents.
Yep. And
all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to put you in here. Like we painted the walls. So, here's your jail cell, but there's paint on the walls. It's terrible. And then and that goes into that whole you know, the foster care to prison pipeline, you know,
Yeah.
is what they call it. Because if that's what you know,
Yeah.
you know, you're being put in a juvie facility and you're being put you're institutionalized.
You start by being raised by shit parents, and then you're taken away from the shit parents, and then you're put into a place that's horrifying, right? Like basically like a prison, you know, and then like 18 years old, you're kicked out on the street.
Well,
It's
yeah.
like survive.
And exactly. And then, you know, you're going to be stealing or dealing or doing whatever you have to do to survive. And you don't know any better.
Yeah.
You don't know any better.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think people have a hard time recognizing. We want to villainize homeless people so much. Like, they're like, oh, most of them want to be homeless. Most of them, they're addicts. Or I'm not going to give them money. They're going to spend it on drugs. Like, these are kids. They're, you know, they just turned 18. They're children, and we can't keep villainizing people for things that were never their fault. You know, foster kids didn't ask to be foster kids.
No.
They didn't ask to have a shitty life or shitty parents, and you have to find some kindness. Like, people, when you think about foster kids, that's one thing I really am trying to change. When you think about foster kids, people are like, oh, I don't want a teenager. I'm afraid something is wrong with them. And I'm like, you're so close. You recognize that, like, foster care is traumatic.
Yeah.
But you're not going to do anything about it. You're just going to say, I don't want a teenager. You know, they've been through so much. And
Yeah.
you're so close. You're so close to seeing it. But people are like, oh, no, I'm like, you're almost there. Almost there.
You know, I know we glanced over like your history a little bit, and I want to talk about so there's a documentary out there. What's the name of the documentary again?
It's called Playground.
Okay. And then your sister's the main focus of the documentary.
She is, yeah.
George Clooney helped produce it.
He did. He was a co-producer.
Yeah. And then, like, the impact, I watched that documentary.
It took me a long time to watch it
Yeah.
when I found out about it. TikTok helped me find out about it, actually.
Is that
I didn't
right?
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know. Somebody was like, your sister's in this documentary. And I was like, that's crazy.
Is it easy enough for you to break down what the documentary's about? Or do you want me to do it?
Yeah. No, I can. So, well, I'll start from the beginning, I guess. My sister and I were separated in foster care. And when TikTok became a thing, I think it was like 2020, maybe 2021. I put out this video where I was like looking for my sister, and I told TikTok, I was like, here's these pictures that I have. My sister and I were separated in foster care, and I don't know where she's at. And somebody wrote me a message, and they were like, I've seen your sister in a documentary. And I was like, it was probably, I think maybe 1 a.m, and I got this message, and I looked up this documentary called Playground, and there was a picture of me and my sister. There was a picture of us like on the trailer, and I was so confused. And my sister had gotten trafficked at 11 years old. She was abducted and trafficked to Canada, actually. She was taken from a mall in Portland, Oregon, and trafficked to Canada. And there was this entire documentary with pictures of me and pictures of her.
Yeah.
And just really going over like our life and our history and the things that led her into being trafficked. And it was so crazy to me. Like, the foster care system, they just, one day in like the early 2000s, they were like, you can't see your sister anymore. And I was like, why? I don't understand. And I never saw her again. But with the help of TikTok, I found the documentary, and I found a police officer, actually. So she was rescued from trafficking, and the foster care system they just locked her away in a psych ward. And I found this police officer in Oakland who, through TikTok, like, went and on her own, she went and found my sister at this homeless camp in Oakland. And I was able to have like a FaceTime video chat with my sister.
Yeah.
She's definitely suffering from her, like, the effects of her trauma.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, they don't get that far in the documentary, obviously, and then there's been a lot of years since then. But
yeah, I think it was 2014 it was made.
There's some stuff in there that's so graphic we can't even, I don't think you have on this podcast too.
Yeah, it is. It was really hard for me to bring myself to watch it. Some people from TikTok would send me pictures of my sister, because I haven't seen her since I was 8 years old. That was the last time I saw her. And some people sent me pictures of her, and I just like broke down and I lost it. And it took me so long to watch the documentary, but like millions of people watched it. And it took me weeks before I could like sit down and bring myself to watch it. And it's so weird because the journalist, like she went to like my childhood home, and she found my neighbors.
Yeah.
And they would talk about, 3 little girls, which was me and my sisters. And they would talk, they were like, yeah, we knew they were being abused. We knew they were being hurt. And so the documentary goes really deep into my childhood. And I remember after I put it on TikTok, like, I think it was like, thousands of people watched it. Millions of people have seen the documentary.
Yeah.
And when I finally did watch it, I felt so vulnerable and so exposed. And it really made me I want to tell my story my way.
Yeah.
And it was so weird to me that somebody could just come and like use my life like for their fame, or,
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to tell my story myself. I want to be in charge of my story, because it was really weird watching my life on TV, and it was awful. And then I just felt so vulnerable and so exposed. It took me a really long time to find my voice again and start doing like my advocacy work. I remember just feeling super raw, and like these are things that I talk about, but they're like, there are certain nuances that I don't tell people about, and the documentary really exposed a lot of that.
Sure.
And it was weird.
No, it's raw. And then you ended up on Dr. Phil.
I did.
And tell me about that.
Yeah, well, somebody, actually, it was from TikTok as well. A producer reached out to me, and she wanted me to be on Dr. Phil to talk about aging out of foster care. And I went there with this amazing girl named Nia. Actually, it was her 21st birthday, the day we went on Dr. Phil, and it was her last day in foster care. And they kind of compared us. Today is my birthday. I'm 33.
Yeah.
But they compared us, and I was like, I'm 10 years older than this girl.
Yeah.
I have 2 degrees. I'm in the military, and she's figuring herself out. She's 21. She's figuring herself out. She's learning. And they kind of compared us, and I kind of stopped. I stopped like the middle of the show, and I was like, I just looked at her, and I was like, listen, I have had 10 years more of life experience than you to get to this point that I'm at. When I was your age, I had no idea what I was doing, because I could tell she was uncomfortable, and it was a little bit weird. It was definitely a little bit weird, but she's doing great now.
That's good.
But it was good to be able to talk about foster care, but I didn't like the way they compared Nia and I.
Yeah.
Because like I'm an adult,
Yeah.
and she's still kind of like young. She's like a kid, and that's how I viewed her. I was like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not okay. And I know they had to. Like, I know Dr. Phil and his producers had to do that to kind of like show, I guess, like the nuances, but it was rough. It was rough.
Do you have any idea the odds of like success? Like the chances of you not being where, and like Lisa, you guys is a real underdog bootstrapper game changer, because it's like, she is not only like came from that system. And if you watch the documentary, it's like, we don't want to deep dive it, but you'll understand even more, it's like of what she came from, ended up homeless, and then became a college graduate, you're doing PR stuff for the National Guard now, it's like, you're an incredible success story.
Thank you.
And
yeah.
what are the stats around that?
2% of foster youth get a college degree, and 50% will graduate from high school.
What's it like to poke the eye of the odds?
I mean, it should feel better, but I feel overwhelmingly guilty for all my success, I would say.
Define that.
I feel guilt, I would say, because I'm being extremely successful while other people are failing. And I don't know how to change that. So it's like bittersweet. It's like I'm happy to be successful, but I don't like being called resilient. People call me resilient all the time. And I feel like you're taking away from other people. Like when you say that to me, when people recognize me for what I've done, I'm like, no, you don't need to recognize me for what I've done. Like you need to recognize how we're failing, all these other children.
I agree with you, but if we don't have somebody that's made it to look at, like, you know, it's like the odds of somebody whose parent was in prison and them making it is like, I think it's 95% likely you're going to go too. And I always wondered, I'm like, you know, where's my person to look at, you know, to like know that I can make it, you know, that sort of stuff. And so like you're out there, you're showing that you can make it, right? It's like, and so they have somebody to look to now that it's like, this isn't a completely defeated system. Somebody else has done it, right? And so, and I know like I support you any way I can, you know, and like I'm rather protective of you, you know, because like I know how much impact you're making already. I know much, like if there's somebody that's going to change this system, it's going to be you. And I know that. You support the people that are able to make the changes. I really believe that.
I'm trying so hard, but it's, I mean, we just got to have more people who care.
We do, and that's
we got to.
Part of what I try to bring with this. It's like, so systems, right? It's like we all remember the biological food chain, you know, and I always murder it, you know, on the show, but I bring it up as a point all the time. It's like we have the amoeba, right? And the amoeba is eaten by the frog, and the frog's eaten by the fox, and the fox is eaten by the wolf, you know. It's like we have this system. Everybody knows this system, and the second you pull the frog out, it messes up the whole system, you know. And I don't think we think about that with problems enough, right? It's like we want to like solve a problem at the fox level, right? You know, like so far down the road, it's like everybody got up in arms, and then rightly so, I did myself too, about like the thought of trafficking in this world. It raises us all to another level, right? You know, I agree with 100%, but the foster care system. You have to start
at the beginning.
Yes. That's where we need to start, because that's going to make the biggest impact. I'm all for it. Let's fight it here too. Like, it's horrifying, you know? I'm super passionate about it. But why wouldn't we start the systems in the start? We need to fight the systems in the start.
Oh, and that's the thing people don't realize is they're looking at it from their lens, their scope.
Yeah.
And you have to start at the beginning, like the root problems. And there's just, people are like, oh, this is terrible. This is horrible. We have to do something about this. I'm like, you have to start at the beginning. You have to start at the beginning. You have to go all the way back to the beginning of it. And unless people start doing that, they're not going to impact change.
Well, and hope's such a big thing. I'm going to murder the study right now, but there was a study around mice, you know. It's like right before a mouse drowns, they pull them out, you know. It's like, and like basically,
that's so sad.
Yeah. And like basically what it tells it is like these mice are able to swim multitudes longer of the ones they don't try to save, because they're like, any moment I'm going to get saved. They give them hope is what, and
I know this. I
murdered the study, but the idea is still the same. And you know, that's what you're doing actually when you're out there talking to the world. And that's why I'm a huge fan of the camera for this sort of stuff. I'm a huge fan of you for this sort of stuff, because you're giving hope, right?
I'm trying.
Because you can make it through these systems. And that's why it's imperative to have you involved with something that's around this. You know, it's like, yes, I'm horrified, absolutely, that we're sending kids to like these sort of places before they even have a chance. They're set up for failure. We know the recidivism rates of offenders in prison, you know, let alone when you send somebody that's innocent, you know, and done nothing wrong, and all of a sudden you're going to put them in a prison type environment. It's so much failure.
Yeah, well, you've institutionalized them already, and that's going to be what they know. Yeah. And that's why we see those crazy high rates of incarceration.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's their normal.
There's so many broken systems that get there to that. And we're starting with the age out system, obviously, because that's one that we can approach, I think, and be helpful, you know. And so Foster Connections is basically going to be a hub for those places that currently exist, hoping to do YouTube videos. I hope eventually we get to do some sort of documentary on your story so you can control that story. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Actually, I think that comes sooner than later.
Maybe.
Yeah. And that honestly, it's so easy to pull this stuff off. And, you know, there's a lot of creatives in the world that, you know, I actually talked to one last week. He came in here and he's like, hey, I just want to help with this sort of stuff, bringing awareness to foundations and things like that. I was like, funny that you say that, because like literally I think that's a pivotal thing that Foster Connections needs to be doing, is using YouTube, using the camera, go out, find an amazing foundation, talk about it. You know, it's like this place exists in the world, kids, you know, and then when it comes to them needing it, they have a place to contact where it helps them navigate how to get the actual service. So,
I mean, I started focusing so much more on nonprofits because they're the people that are doing like making really good changes, positive influence, and they're being impactful. And I started focusing so much of my energy on these nonprofits because, like, you're right, there are so many resources out there, but teens don't know how to access them. They don't know how to get to them. And that's the only way we're going to help, is by making sure that, the resources are there and making sure that they know how to get the resources.
I mean, you've been a voice for that, and then kids contact you quite often, don't they?
Yes, yeah, I do. I mentor kids. Usually it's from TikTok, but I mentor some teens, case by case basis, I would say. Usually I try to like refer them to another like nonprofit organization, but there are some teens that just they touch my heart, and I'll mentor them throughout their like journey, and I'll help them make sure that they have the right resources and access, and also just being like a shoulder.
Yeah.
It's some of the things that I've heard I mean, I know that I had a crazy upbringing. I know that my foster care story is really rough, but it's not unusual. It's not unique. And the things that I hear from these teens is so difficult. It is so difficult, and it makes me so angry, and it just hurts my heart, and I have to keep going, right? I have to keep going. I have to keep making these changes and helping, because there's no use in just being mad and not doing anything.
Yeah.
So
if I give you a magic wand tomorrow to like fix this system,
I hate this question.
Tell me a little bit about how you fix it.
I hate this question. Well, when we look at it, right, you have to start at the root cause. And the root cause, generally, I would say, is it starts with a family. So we need to find a way, and drugs, like addiction. Mm-hmm. Addiction is the number one reason why kids are in foster care, because their parents are addicts.
Yeah.
So we have to start at the beginning, right? So, I mean, we need to address mental health, and we need to address addiction, and fixing those things will help impact foster care in a way, like, kids won't be going there. But if we had to change foster care, we need to, you can't throw money at problems. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Foster parents don't get paid a whole lot, mm-hmm. but a lot of people do it for the money, and we're advertising like at like 7-Eleven. Like, they'll be like, do you want to make extra money, become a foster parent?
Really?
Yes. And
That's
they have
insane.
like literally like those like pull tabs, like we like pull a phone number off.
No way.
Like, yes. And they have like just like, and I'm like, this is how you're getting foster parents. Like, this is what we're doing.
Why do they make it like, I have a good friend. He's very successful. Wife's very successful. Beautiful $1 million house that they live in. Great people. It's like they struggled to get to adopt. They had a hard time. They tried to have kids for a while. They struggled to adopt. Like, it was really tough for them. It was a couple of year process. But then there's pull tabs out there to be like, explain that to me.
Well, I mean, my view of adoption is a little bit different than I think most people would have. I have a different perspective, but it goes back to where I said, like, we have to change the way we view foster kids, because we look at them like they did something wrong, or there's something inherently like flawed within them, and they're unwanted.
Yeah,
and it's difficult to change that perspective and that idea that society has. And so it's hard to get foster parents, I would say. It's difficult to get good foster parents. Because they're people who do get in it for the right reasons, and they're like kind, and they lead with kindness, and they're good foster parents. They're going to get burned out. They're going to get burned out. They're, you know, the system is just, it's flawed at so many different stages. Yeah. You know, like we're failing the kids, we're failing the foster parents. The good foster parents are being, you know, given the runaround, or, you know, they can't find resources. They need mental health resources for one of their foster kids. The caseworker won't call them back. And then, you know, they're afraid to like call the caseworker. The caseworker's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna take this kid away from you, put him in a new house. Like, and they're like, no, I just want to help them. I just want to find them resources. And, you know, it's so many stages. There's so many stages where, you know, we're failing. Yeah. And so there's not like one simple solution to like fix it. It's just, it's systemic, you know?
There's a documentary, have you seen it? How to Manufacture a Sex Scandal or something like that? It's crazy. It's basically these foster parents that they create in the kids' minds that their parents had done something awful to them in the way of like taking them to this like sex cult thing. And it turns out in the documentary that that wasn't true, that basically the reason that they had perpetuated that is because if you had more of a mental reason for mental illness, they got paid more money.
Yes. Yeah. I talk about that so often. Is foster parents are incentivized to basically say that you're a bad kid. Yeah. So I remember my little brother and I, we're only 11 months apart. So we're super close, and we fight. We fought so much as kids. Yeah. And I remember him and I think we were like 5, and we were fighting each other, and I got labeled as violent. And I was like, and my foster parents got paid more money. Like but now.
What a reward system.
Exactly.
It all comes down to broken reward systems too.
But now I'm a violent kid, right? And I'm labeled as that. So the number of foster homes that I was allowed to go to, like, it gets less and less and less. And foster parents are just basically incentivized to be like, oh yeah, this kid is violent, or this kid is this, or this kid has this. And the more things that they add on, the more money they make, but they don't care about the repercussions. They don't care that, like, I'm going to go through 10 more years of foster care, and I'm only going to be, the number of homes that I'm allowed to go in is going to get smaller, and the quality of those homes is going to be worse.
All because somebody wanted to make some more money calling you a violent kid.
Yes, yeah. Just for having a spat with my brother at 5 years old it's insane. It's crazy. That's a normal kid thing.
In that documentary, a couple people end up going to jail over it, you know, that sort of stuff. And they weren't award winner parents by any means, but they weren't doing that either. And, you know, it's just crazy to me. We see broken systems, and usually there's a broken reward system included in that, you know. And so it's insanity the way that, like, we're treating these systems. And that's why I'm excited to, like, work on something where we have you has insight. And, like, I think anybody that wants to work on changing something needs to get somebody involved that's immersed into what it is, you know, and then like, because you can't change systems by just guessing what they are.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, I mean, even now, like the teens that I talk to, I always try to get their perspective and their needs, because, you know, I've been out of foster care for, you know, a decade. Yeah. Like, so I understand the system from my perspective, my point of view. But it's changing, right? Yeah. So we need to know what's going on, and I'm constantly talking to teens, and I'm trying to get them to be involved. Like, get involved, speak up, advocate, because, you know, they're going to understand it even more than I do, and I need their perspective. I can't, you know, you can't change things if you don't understand it deeply, and I do, but they understand it a little more than I do, and it's important to recognize that.
We trash people, and, you know, it's like we're not even giving them a shot, you know, at at life, you know, and everybody deserves a shot at life, you know, and at the same time, then we set up the bad reward systems for perpetuating those systems, you know, and it's like, and then we make it for some reason, somehow in those systems, very difficult for good people to help, you know, it's like, I don't know how we do that on both ends, but we somehow figure out doing that on both ends. When I first heard about this thing, I knew immediately, like, I didn't know what to do to help, you know, but I knew that, like, and I say this on the show all the time, if it hits you here and it hits you here, that means, and I mean your heart and your stomach for those just listening, that means you have to do something about it, you know? And so like I felt so hopeless in that moment to like help make an impact. And that's when, you know, we got together with Mary and some other people, you know, to like try to make a difference. And, you know, and even one person's worth it.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Well, because these kids, they didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. And we have to, like, you have to raise awareness first, I think. Like,
agreed.
Like people just don't even know what foster care is, or they have such a misconstrued idea of it.
When I use that stat, people are horrified.
Yeah.
When I tell them about kids going to the youth incarceration centers, they're horrified. So what does that tell you? If we could tell more people that alone,
exactly,
it would change it.
Like, well, and you have to make and it sucks, right? It sucks that we have to make people care, but you know, you don't know what you don't know. No. And so many people don't even understand what's happening or what's going on. And you have to be like, hey, listen, this 90% of the people on death row came from foster care.
Yeah.
Like 80% of the children rescued from trafficking came from foster care. Yeah. And you have to use these crazy statistics, which are valid and true. Yeah. But you have to do that just to get people to care about it. Otherwise, they're not going to care about foster kids. Yep. They're like, whatever. Like, who cares? It doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me, so I don't care.
I mean, I think the assumption is like people keep their eyes closed on it and they just assume we're taking care of them. It's getting handled properly. You know, I think
they think they're somewhere better. They're like, you're somewhere.
We're taking them out of the broken home. Yes, you know, they're in paradise now. I think that's the assumption of the American population.
Oh, and it's just not true. It's just not true. Foster care is so bad. It's so bad, and I can't. There's nothing I can do to make people understand foster care the way that I do, but it's just so bad. Yeah. It's so awful. It is so terrible, and you're set up for a life of failure. That's what you're set up for. That's what it's creating, and it's really difficult to climb your way out of that.
Totally is. You know, it's like there's that finish line analogy, you know, where it's like they give a bunch of variables. Like if you're starting with 2 parents or you're starting with middle income or whatever, you start where you're going to start on that starting line, right? And like, it's amazing how far the start line even most kids are starting, right? Yeah. It's like, even if you just have like a standard set of parents from a middle class background, you know, it's like you're far ahead.
Yeah, you're already killing it. You're crushing it.
And that's why it's like a big majority of my work is under this like intention that like if you take more people that had to deal with horrible circumstances, situations without the rich uncle to help them, you know, like that sort of stuff. And then you help them get their success. And I don't mean give it to them by any means. Nobody's giving you anything in this world, you know, not unless you come from that, you know, it's like, but like you can educate around it. You can support, you can, you know, like be that ear to listen, you know, it's like we can absolutely do that in the world, you know, it's like, and those people, when they make it, they change things. I tell people this all the time. It's like if Elon Musk had grown up in the foster care system, would it look the way it does?
Yeah, it would be fixed.
Yeah, he'd be pissed off about it from growing up into it. It wasn't fair, and that's why you need that Elon Musk that's out there right now, not getting aged out to become homeless. You know, because then you know a guy right now, don't you? That like is a genius that created some amazing company.
Yeah.
Came out of the foster care system.
He did. Yeah, he owns a defense company actually, and he's doing amazing things. He's actually opening up a gifted program in Hawaii for
foster kids.
For foster kids and orphans for the world.
Yeah.
They can come from anywhere.
That's amazing.
And he's opening up this gifted home, and I'm really excited to see what he does. But yeah, he's made himself very successful, and he's giving back. He's trying. He's impacting change, and that's what we need. So many people, right? They don't want to talk about their past or their trauma or their history. They want to pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yep.
But if we don't talk about it, nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to change it. And we need people. We need people who are going to be changers.
The sad part of it too is you need to get your success if you've been through this stuff, because this is the best way to change it. People will listen to you when you're in a boardroom. People, if Bill Gates says something, he can change something right now, and nobody understands it like somebody that's been immersed into a system that's dealt with the pain firsthand. I actually applaud people that came from perfect system, perfect families, and still care about this stuff, right? It's like, because you're caring about it just because you're a good human, not because it's paining you on a different level, right? And so it's like, you grow up with everything and you still care about this stuff.
Good on
beautiful. You know, it's like, I know like a lot of us grow up and like we're mad about the system, and that's why we want to change it, you know? And so like, and that's fine too, you know, but they like those people working together. And that's the thing too. It's like, there's amazing amount of kind-hearted people that want to affect these things. And I think we're hoping to be more of a thread to put people together. This is a united front in changing these things. And youth incarceration groups should care. Prison reformists should care. You know, like humanity people should care. Child welfare people should care. And if we all kind of work together on the same problems, you know, it's like they can make a change.
But it's so difficult. It's difficult. That's the first step, is getting people to care.
Yeah. That's why I think what you're doing is beautiful. That's why, like, when somebody comes at you, it's like, I take it so personal. You know, it's like, I get mad on another level. You can do what you want to me, but like, I'm very protective of you because I see the amazing work that you're doing and the way people come at you over it.
I don't take them seriously, though. That's the thing.
And I appreciate that you don't, you know, so.
I'll do like some little, like, reply videos to some of these hate comments. And I try to be lighthearted and like mostly nice about it. But it's just, hurt people. They do. You know, like happy people don't hurt people.
No.
And so I just have to think about it that way. It's like, you know, people are, how hurt do they have to be to be saying stuff like that, you know? And I just have empathy for them, kindness. And I'm like,
that it's what it always is. You know, like when I have somebody that says something crappy to me in the comments or something like that, I usually respond with kindness. Or the other day, some guy drops in something nasty at me and I'm like, you know what? I can take this, you know? And so I'm glad you're wasting your time on me,
not somebody
because
else.
I can deal with it and instead of hurting somebody else. And to that point, he actually came back and said something nice to me, you know, about it. You know, it's like, so like,
that's what they're looking for. They're looking for attention. And I mean, they're hurt. Mm-hmm. And that's why responding with kindness, right? You helped him, you know?
It's just crazy though. Why go after you instead of the guy that's out there sitting in the rented Ferrari trying to sell like $100 course, you know, that is no good for, you know, it's like, I don't understand that, but it's the world we live in, you know, it's the, you know, like the people that are out there trying to do the good in the world. For some reason, we try to bring them down instead of boost them up. And so I would say to you, game changers out there, keep doing it anyway, you know, survive out of spite. Like Lisa, you know, it's
survive out of spite.
I love the fire in your system for like what you're doing. I really do.
It's a lot. There's a lot of fire in there.
Yeah. And so I want to give you a chance to like, you should probably tell people your TikTok at least so they can follow you.
Miss Lisa Pisa.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my everything. There are hundreds of fake accounts of me, which is super weird.
Yeah.
People like take my videos and like, but I only have one. I have one Instagram. I have one TikTok. It's all Miss Lisa Pisa. But yeah, it's super, super odd. All these little fake, seeing myself like with all these weird captions. I'm like, wait, can you just not steal my video for one day, please?
Like taking your own text even.
Yeah, it's so odd.
Thank you for everything you're doing. And thanks for coming on the show today on your birthday, you know.
Thank you.
And so really excited about what we're working on. For those of you out there, especially creatives or anybody on any level, if you want to be able to help with Foster Connections as we're building it, developing it, love to get together.
Help.
Yeah, love to get together with creatives, bring out a camera, let's make an event of it. If you're also like somebody that runs a foster foundation or anything along those lines, we want to bring awareness to what you're doing and support good people. I want to thank you today for joining us on another episode of Underdogs, Bootstrappers, Game Changers. A little bit different episode, but what I want you to totally get out of this is success comes with it obligation. I truly believe in that. You know,
that's fair.
And if you can get your success, you can do a hell of a lot more, with it. And I also want you to understand the impact of systems. And we all get frustrated about things, but then I implore you to dive a little bit deeper and understand the true fundamentals of what is going wrong in that system so we can actually fix things. So think different, folks. Thanks for joining us. Hello and welcome to Underdogs, Bootstrappers, and Game Changers. This is for those of you that are starting with nothing and using business to change their stars. Motivating people who disrupted industry standards. This is the real side of business. This isn't Shark Tank. My aim with this podcast is to take away some of the imaginary roadblocks that are out there. I want to help more underdogs because underdogs are truly who change the world. This is part of our Content for Good initiative. All the proceeds from the monetization of this podcast will go to charitable causes. It's for the person that wants it.